All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the National Center for Victims of Crime's first ever Google Hangout. And what a terrific reason to start something new. And that is this extraordinary release of funding from the Crime Victims Fund. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. We have some of the answers. We don't have all of the answers yet, but do notice that on Google Hangout, there's a question and answer bar. So as we go along, please feel free to submit your questions in that sidebar, and I will do my best to answer them or to tell you that we don't know yet. So just a summary. I'm sure you've seen that Congress in this year's appropriations bill raised the VOCA cap to $2.36 billion. That's more than 3 times the amount we received in 2014. You may recall we got $745 million then and counted ourselves lucky. So we're thrilled with this increase. We know that it's due to the advocacy many of you have been doing with us for the past many, many years. It has been frustrating for us to watch that balance in the Crime Victims Fund grow and grow to $13 billion. Meanwhile, we knew there were crime victims we were not able to serve. So we're finally starting to see some parity. In fact, one of the first things we all asked ourselves was, why 2.36 billion? We're not entirely sure where that figure came from, but it's just a little lower than the average amount that's been deposited into the VOCA fund or the Crime Victims Fund over the past 5 years. So we think that this year's appropriations bill approximates the amount of deposits into the Crime Victims Fund. Let me just take a step back. For those of you who are not deeply immersed in the VOCA fund, like some of your colleagues, I'll just remind you that this fund was established in the early 80s to support crime victim compensation and victim services nationwide. It's comprised of fines on federal offenders as well as some other penalties on federal offenders. Most of that money comes from those high dollar corporate fines that come in at, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. That's where the bulk of that funding comes from. So this year, Congress raised the cap to $2.36 billion. I'm sure one of the first questions that we all have is exactly how much of this money is going to come to the states. We don't know for sure how much of that, but we are comfortable in saying it will be more than 3 times what the states received last year. The reason for that is because of the way that the VOCA funds are doled out each year by statute. Most of the other uses for VOCA funds are fairly well fixed. So you may recall that by statute or by the appropriations bill, first there's some money that's taken out for federal level victim assistance through the U.S. Attorney's offices and the FBI, the automated notification system for victims. There's some money under the Children's Justice Act, but those are fairly fixed. And then of the bulk of the money, OVC retains a percentage for its grant funding. States get compensation, but that amount, what they get for compensation, is based on a percentage of what they previously paid out. So this means that bulk of the increase is going to come down to the states for their state victim assistance grants. Yay! That means that those of us with long waiting lists for services can start to tackle those. Those of us who've never received a VOCA grant can start thinking about what to put in for, and states can plan. Even though the bulk of the money will come to the states, we still don't know how much DOJ will retain. I do need to let you start thinking about this too. All of the federal grant programs that go through the Department of Justice, especially the Office of Justice programs, Congress allows DOJ to retain a certain percentage of that funding for management and administration. Now, this funding, or this percentage for M&A, it's called, has been at about 8%. We don't know whether 8% of this VOCA funding will be kept for management and administration or not. Congress also included in the appropriations bill language that urges DOJ to really think hard about how much is justified to come out of the VOCA fund. I believe I have some language here. Let me just read that. It says that the department shall assess management and administration expenses against program funding. The committee, that's the Appropriations Committee, directs the department to ensure that its assessment methodology is equitable, and for programs funded through the Crime Victims Fund, that the assessment reflects a fair representation of the share of each program devoted to common management and administration costs. In other words, Congress is trying to say, don't take more than you really need from the VOCA fund, but that's something that we're all going to need to watch. So we're not entirely sure how much states are going to get. The other question that we don't yet have the answer to is when. When will states see this money? Congress requires DOJ to do two things before it can release this money. The first is to draw up a new oversight plan. So Congress directs OVC to develop a new plan to oversee the spending of this money. And they say explicitly, because it's so much more money than you've ever had to administer before. So OVC is going to have to come up with what's the increased oversight that it'll need to do. And then the Department of Justice, as it has to every year, has to do a thorough spending plan. How are they going to spend all the money in the appropriations bill? That has to go to Congress and get approved. So those things will cause a few months of delay. So we're not entirely sure when we'll get that. The other question you must have is, I know I have it, is this the new normal? Is $2.36 billion going to be approximately what states get every year from here on out? There's no way to know that for sure. You know, appropriations is a year-to-year venture, but we have reason to hope and reason to fight, reason to advocate. Because $2.36 billion, as I indicated before, is very close to the amount of those criminal fines that get deposited every year into the VOCA fund. And we know there's still about $10 billion, that will still be about $10 billion left on the account even after this disbursement. So we should be able to advocate to receive this money. But one thing that Congress has made clear in its appropriation is that it wants to see that these funds are used well. So not only is it requiring the Department of Justice, or especially OVC, to develop more management and oversight, it's setting aside $10 million for the Inspector General to audit some of these grants. It is also requiring, or other report language by the appropriators urges all Department of Justice grant programs to be looking for evidence-based practices. They want to see that we're using this money well. So one of the things that advocates can start doing right now is to think about, how can you be measuring the impact of what you're doing for crime victims? How can you be capturing your outcomes? And how can you report this? If you look on our website, we have a link to a terrific new resource that the Centers for Disease Control has put out. It's sort of an entry-level outcome measurement or entry-level evaluation interactive web tool that I think you'll find really helpful. Another thing that advocates can do right now is to start thinking about how to quantify that unmet need, not only for the constituents that you're already serving, but those that you see in the community. And this would be a really good time to reflect on the needs of the clients that you're already seeing for services that they're not getting. So, for example, you may receive a client may be sent to you because of one victimization, but once you start working with them, you realize they have other victim-related needs or trauma-related needs. So let's say you are serving a victim of domestic violence, but you find out they've also been a victim of identity theft. Or you're serving a child sexual abuse survivor, but you find out there was also a homicide in the family, and the family needs services for that too. So start thinking broadly about the needs of crime victims. OVC is really going to be urging all of the states to do careful planning for how we can best use this money. And then as I alluded to earlier, Congress is going to be insisting that this money be put to the best use. They want to see that we are spending it well. Finally, this is a smaller bit of advice, but for those of you in community-based programs that do not yet have your official nonprofit status, your 501c3 status, this would be a great time to jump on that. There's other language in the appropriations bill that urges OVC to make sure that nonprofits have 501c3 status. So ask around in your community. You may be able to find free help to get that status. And if you need ideas, email me. We don't have anything in the question box. I know I have covered a lot. There must be more that you're thinking of. So look for that Q&A box. If there's anything you want to take this opportunity to ask, please jot that down and I'll see if I have an answer for you. I'll sing the Jeopardy song while we wait. Okay, either we're having technical difficulties with the Q&A function or you don't have questions. Let me give you my email address. I will be happy to do my best to come up to answer any questions you may have, and I'll work with our webmaster to find a place online where we can post those questions and answers. So my email address is Showley, that's SHOWLEY, at NCVC, that's National Center Victim Crime.org. Again, Showley at ncvc.org. Feel free to send your questions and you can check our website for further updates. All right, we do have one question. It says, will this new funding go toward victims of elder or vulnerable adult abuse? The funding does not require particular uses, but you should be prepared to advocate for that funding from your state VOCA administrator. This is an excellent time for us to broaden the base of victims that we reach and serve. And elders and victims with persons with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to crime and have not had, in most states, a strong network of services. So this would be a great time to think about what are the service needs for that population, as well as for other populations that have gone underserved for so long. Immigrant victims, teen victims, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender victims, Native American victims, all of those people that we know have special needs and we've not adequately served them. We really do need to think broadly. This is our best opportunity to do a much better job of reaching and serving all victims of crime. And I think that's it for questions. All right, well, thanks for joining me today. I hope you liked this Google Hangout. Please feel free to send me any feedback you have about the technology as well. We'll try to repeat these in the future. Have a happy, happy holiday. That VOCA funding can't help but make that a reality. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.